Thank you. Farm Friends is involved in this mostly just because we have we fell into this as some place to try to manage a program. That is a really big part of our mission. But yeah, flip that slide. Matt's going to do most of this. So, you know, our mission is to preserve and enhance agriculture, and the things that we get involved in, I think most of you know. And this is kind of the last category, whatever else is needed to be done in terms of trying to make that program work that farmers want. Starling program started about 15 some years ago. Probably, maybe some of you have memories that some dairy farmers actually found a rather unique way to kill starlings that wasn't exactly according to Hoyle. And they had to... It
sure worked, though.
It sure worked, yeah. That's right. It did work. And, but they ran into a little bit of a problem with the law, and there was, you know, kill for eagles. Well, that ate some of these dead starlings. And as a result, we negotiated rather than them paying into some pot somewhere, they paid into a program that would start to kill starlings, to get rid of them. And we've been managing that just because somebody needs to. And it certainly is a partnership between farmers. Flip to another one. It's a nuisance wildlife program. It focuses on starlings. Matt's going to talk a little about some of the other things that they've been doing as well. We kind of incorporated Beaver Control as well. So Matt's going to kind of give you a little idea of exactly what we work with USDA. That's the way it's been working for us. They're the best deal in the book for us. There are private trappers out there, but these guys at USDA Wildlife Services have they run really a highly subsidized program. For we pay, and the payment usually comes from half the farmers, including the Farm Bureau kicks in. Bob makes sure of that. And then the other half from Whatcom County to cover our Starling program. And the Beaver usually is sort of a, by Beaver, we bill to the districts or to the individuals. And we contract with these guys. They really do a great job, and they do it in a way that's responsible, accountable, and they've been a great partner. So Matt, you're going to take it the rest of the way, right?
Yes. You get money from Whatcom County?
We get $15,000 a year.
From what department?
From the executive's office. Yes.
Did this just start?
No, well, it's gone up. It's gone up and down. We've had about 5,000, went to 10, up to 15. It kind of went down, but now it's back to 15. And the idea is that it matches farmers' contributions. Farmers put in 15, county puts in 15, because the reality is this is a problem beyond just agriculture. And Bob's been helping us making that argument for a lot of years, and it's both of our executives, actually 3 of them now, have bought into it. Yep, Bob.
Well, so we got to give Pete Grumman some credit because the county council wasn't going to come along, and Pete took it on, and he has a little allotment. He started it. That made him feel a little guilty. Now they support us.
Mm-hmm. And so do you have to, like, you send a bill to farmers and so forth, trying to get the 15,000 or?
Farm Friends does all that. Yeah, we do all that. What we do each year, we have to fill out a form for, for the county, request this, get into the county budget, go through that process, report to the county council, all that stuff. And then we send out a letter to probably about 30, 40 different farmers. Really, dairy and blueberry are the two kind of we don't send out to everybody. And then we try to say, hey, in order to make this program run, you got to come up with half. The county comes up with half. We contract with these guys.
No, it's just knowing how hard it is to get money out of our county for anything.
Yep. It is. It's been one of the few areas where I think the county directly supports agriculture, with a check. I don't know if there are any others, really. Yep.
Do you get matching dollars from your drainage improvement districts?
No, on the Beaver program, that's run a little differently. But the Beaver program is run really, we go out and trap for somebody with their approval in the districts, and then we bill them. So it's sort of a reimbursable kind of thing. We incur the cost, and then we pay the Wildlife Services for the time and energy. It's kind of how much time do they put in, we pay. The Starling contract is a yearly contract for about $30,000. Then it's 15 from each, and that takes care of all the work that Marv does, all the liability, all the supplies, everything. So it's been a really good
one-stop shop.
Matt, you're on.
So I like to keep these pretty informal. Do you guys have questions throughout?
I got a question.
That was quick.
I'm an old guy and I don't know these people, and then Henry pointed at that guy and I don't know what he does. So
Well, he's gonna have to do something. You're gonna find out, if you were just quiet for a minute, you would listen and learn all this stuff out.
But I'd like to know ahead of time.
Okay, you'll learn very shortly.
Okay.
Matt, yeah, I've got a question. What is gull control?
We'll get into all that.
Okay.
I'll do some introductions really quick. So I'm Matt Cleland. I'm the district supervisor for our agency. I oversee all of Western Washington. I've got 22 guys up and down Western Washington doing control work, wildlife control work. This is just a very small picture of our overall program. Marv Struble, he's my local employee up here that does all of the Starling and Beaver control up here, along with some miscellaneous projects outside of Farm Friends work that he does. So he's the guy, him, and I've got one other gal by the name of Krista Lundy, who also works for me up here. Those are the two individuals that you'll see running around doing control work for us. So for those that aren't familiar with USDA Wildlife Services, we are a very, very tiny agency within the USDA. There's about 21 to 2,500 of us nationally. And that's including the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, and Hawaii, and Alaska. We are a fee-for-service agency. In this state, we get no federal funding. My budget is 100% cooperatively funded. You guys pay, well, the county, the farmers, they pay our salaries. They pay for all of our equipment. We're not in the business of making money, we're just in the business of recouping our costs. So it's a really cheap program that we run. So up here, these are the three main categories that we deal with up here, specifically for the ag community. We do starling, pigeon, gull control. Like Henry was saying, our Starling program, it's been running for 15 to 16 plus years. I've actually got a couple of guys that have been working for me now 20 years that were some of the initial guys on that program. And I've got some numbers I'll show you here later. And same with the pigeons. Gulls, that's something that's happened relatively recently. Gulls are protected on the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. As a federal agency, we have a federal permit that allows us to control so many gull species a year in Washington. Up here, there's been some issues with gulls getting out on the fields after they've sprayed fertilizer, going after bugs, going after, I'm not sure what some of the other damages, Mark, that you guys are seeing up here from gulls.
Well, mainly from my pen, we use it, it's the feces is so toxic that it's causing damage, and they're dirty birds, basically. Yeah. So whatever they sit on, they kind of destroy.
Yeah, our gull populations up here have kind of increased. So we are allowed to come in and remove a certain number of gulls every year under the human health and safety issues and property damage. So that's what we do with the gulls.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical. I'd like to find out a little more about it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you got specific? What do you think?
Well, for one thing, they are protected. They've been here for years.
Right.
I mean, if anything, there's fewer gulls because, you know, some of the, I think partly because of increased manure management, but I'm not seeing where, you know, I guess I'd really have to see where it's a problem, you know.
They're usually concentrated, they're really concentrated issues. You know, we're not out here killing thousands of gulls like we are starlings. We're talking, you know, 5, 6 birds here and there type stuff. Very small concentrated efforts on individual properties where you get a large number, like Mark was saying, that'll start roosting on rooftops. I've seen buildings that had brand new roofs on $100,000.
These are roof areas? These aren't field areas, or what is it?
They're not too concerned about it if they're in the field.
Okay.
At least that's my feeling. It's when they get on the buildings and I mean, it'll take the paint right off vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they have to be killed then in order to, you know?
They're a very social bird. So if you kill 1 or 2 birds in a flock, the rest learn it really quick.
Do they have to be killed in order to?
Well, that's the best method, frankly.
That's,
I mean, it doesn't take very many. It doesn't take very many birds to make the point, and they get the message rather quickly. They're smarter than you think.
well, no, I know they're smart. I just had never heard of
Yeah,
gulls, and gulls have been around here for, you know,
right.
and so I'll tell you, I'm a bird lover, you know, a bird, and I'm just like, I'm just really surprised to hear this. And I can see where if you got a couple problematic gulls, but yeah, I mean, do they
Yeah, like I said, it's,
killed and so forth, and how many, and, no, it's interesting. 'Cause
Yeah, I mean-
I don't, you know,
in Whatcom County, I don't think we've taken more than about 20 birds a year in the last 5 years. So, I mean, it's a very small number that we're taking, you know, and like I said, very isolated issues. Some of the other stuff, beaver control, like Henry was saying, we work with the dike districts, we work with the CREP program now, we work with individuals, anybody that's got beaver issues, we can come in and deal with that. Predator control, we also do quite a bit of coyote management for different folks. We do it out for aviation safety on airfields. We do it for livestock protection. We got a pretty big size urban coyote program throughout the state. We have done some work in Bellingham City with coyotes, so it's another program that we're working on.
I got a question for you on
Yep.
starlings.
So,
Yeah, they do mass up. So is the issue with the starling, is it that they get in the fields and take the seed out of the soil, or is it mainly a bird dropping issue?
the two
Quality.
biggest issues with starlings are, well, there's
Down barns?
there's two health issues, and then there's one natural issue. The natural issue is they outcompete our native species.
Sure.
Because they're an invasive species. Two, their fecal material will cause
Salmonella.
salmonella
A few number of other things.
in your dairy cows
Yeah.
and us. So there's that issue with that. And then the consumption rates of them getting in the feed and eating your actual product before your cattle's feed and stuff, before the cattle actually get to it.
So if
And
they get around a milking parlor, it's a big issue with
It can-
salmonella.
a huge issue,
Yeah.
huge issue.
And then the final is the blueberry farms. Blueberries and starlings do not get along very well either. I mean, starlings love the blueberries, farmers don't love starlings.
Yeah. So they're, just in their numbers, I mean, it doesn't take long for them to do
Down at
it.
the Port of Bellingham, they they gotta live with the gulls. And so what they've done down there is the gull droppings are so hot, because the gull has a digestive system that will digest iron.
Mhm.
And they put these devices on the top of pilings and to avert them from landing.
Yep.
And so, there are some avoidance.
Yeah, we actually do quite a bit in areas with deterrence. We put up wire grid systems. We put up some of those deterrents. We do a lot of work with effigies, whether it either be bald eagle kites or manufactured dead gulls. Dead gull upside down on a roosting area makes a great effigy because they don't like to see their friends dead, and that'll scare them off. So we use a lot of those in places, especially on the marinas throughout western Washington.
On the pilings down in Bellingham, they capped them,
Yep.
so the gull can't land.
Yep.
There it comes.
So
And Jeff, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's you see that in a lot of marinas.
yeah.
So this is the Starling going back to the bird program up here. Here's the main individuals that we are dealing with up here when it comes to bird program. One thing that we do get a lot of support from is from the different Audubon societies, because they are, like I said, an invasive species. They are very bad for all of our native birds. They'll take over a nest, they'll kick chicks out. They're just a very destructive bird, and they breed very fast. So we do everything we can to eliminate as many as we possibly can.
How many batches a year?
They'll average 3. They can do up to 4. And you're looking at, I think, between 4 to 6 egg chicks per clutch, and a very high success rate. So it doesn't take long for a pair to become a large colony.
Are any of these blueberry farmers using nets to protect their harvest when they're loaded with berries?
A little bit, not too many though, because the mechanical harvesting that occurs, it makes that a problem.
Yeah.
There's a few fresh market people that have got a few nets.
So here's a little map that shows the spread of the starlings. Anybody know the story of the starling, how it got here? You? All right, European starlings were brought in here in 1891. They were doing a Shakespeare play in Central Park, and they wanted to have all the birds that William Shakespeare had in Europe during his play. So they brought in starlings, they brought in pigeons, house sparrows, and I'm not sure what else. From that, in 1891, they released, I think it was like 12 or 14 pairs, something like that, in Central Park. And you can see how they spread throughout the last 100+ years to everywhere in North America. They're even starting to get them up in the Yukon area. So they become a big issue all because somebody wanted to have them in a play. And now actually Europe, so here's the next program we have to need to work on.
Okay.
They're actually in danger now in Europe. So they're trying to recover them in Europe.
It can be done, it can be done.
So we need to figure out a way to get some funding from the European government to trap them here and take them home.
What did they do in Europe
I think they're just the industrial, it's such an industrial country, and honestly I have no idea.
Because they seem to adapt everywhere. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's...
and they're famous in literature. I mean, Dante talks about it.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know why they've gone endangered there, and they're doing so prolific here.
Right.
So especially when you look at some of the areas that are so urbanized and I mean, it's not like that's a very rural area in here. No, and there's a ton of them. The Midwest is just loaded.
Aren't they good for crane flies? I thought they liked crane flies.
They do eat a lot of larvae out of the soil, so I imagine they would be good with crane flies.
We used to have a lot of crane flies, I don't see them no more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with that part of them, so here's what we're doing with Starling Control. Marv runs for about 6 months out of the year. He runs a trapping program up here, runs 35 traps throughout the year. Mostly in the summer going after the juvenile birds when they're nest, and also getting the migrant birds coming out of Canada. We have a baiting and poisoning program. It's called 1339. It's a toxicant that's registered only to USDA. It causes renal failure in the bird within 24 to 48 hours. So we do that with those. It's a project where we'll pre-bait an area for 3, 4, 5 days in the wintertime, see how many birds are coming in, how much bait they're eating, and then we'll come in on that last day, apply the bait, and we'll sit there and watch that bait to make sure that no other birds are coming in that area, because we don't want to be killing any non-native or any native birds or non-target birds. If anything comes towards that bait that's not a starling, then we'll kick them off. Hazing and scaring tactics.
Where did the birds die?
Most of them go back to their roost and will die in their roost, so we'll pick them.
Because that was the problem with warbacks when it was used.
Right.
The bird died in the field, and then the eagle ate the starling out in the field and died. So
the nice thing about 1339 is the secondary effect is nil. There is no secondary effect with this stuff. Okay. So as soon as it digests that, it breaks down the acids in its belly, and that stuff is a non-toxin after that, and anybody can pick them up with no problem. Your cats can eat them, your dogs, whatever. Yeah.
Starling pie.
So what's, does that have to be handled by you folks, or maybe I missed something here, but that's not available to us?
No, the 1339 is registered only to our agency. So we're the only ones that can actually implement that. But as part of the program that we have up here with Farm Friends and the Starling program, we do offer that program, or that tool within that program. And it's usually a winter program when it's cold outside, and it's easier to deal with them then.
No, there was like Starlicide was being marketed for
Right.
a while or something. Now that had some sort of reduced level, or what really did that? It wasn't as hot as what.
Yeah,
this
it wasn't nearly as hot, and yeah, I don't know anything about that. I've never used it, So
We had a few people that tried it, but I don't think that, is it even on the market anymore? Is anybody even selling it that you guys know?
You can buy it off the internet.
You could. Is it ever worked for you guys?
We've never tried it,
Okay.
but, yeah, that was my question, is herbicide still available?
So it's.
Yeah, and that would be something to talk with the state ag department, pesticide folks, to see if that's a registered toxicant in the state. That I don't know.
But I guess the argument is that it's not nearly as effective as what 1339 is. But along with 1339, you have to live with all the, only they can apply it. You got to have all the, precautions and all those kind of things. So.
So this other material was being used.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same active ingredient or is it something different?
I think it's something different. I don't really know what the other ingredient was, other than the DRC 1339 that we use. So.
Yeah.
Another question, but how are you baiting it now? We used French fry for a while, and that really worked good, because I love those French fries.
It kind of depends on the area. We've got to follow our label. The label is very specific on what we can and can't use as a bait. In a lot of places we do use fries. Over in Eastern Washington, we do these projects on feedlots, and we're doing 30,000, 40,000 birds at a time. And that's all on fries. We do up here, it's kind of whatever we can get. Whatever they're feeding on, if the local feed that the farmer's using is on our label, then we'll try and use that because that's what the birds are used to. Sometimes you throw something new out there and the birds don't want to go to it because they don't know what it is. So we try and do something like that. I don't know, have we tried fries? Have you tried fries?
I can't get them to eat a fry around here.
You can't? Well, they used to.
Yeah, I know, I put it on the cages during the summer and it just rots, they don't touch fries.
How about the
I
winter
use
time?
corn.
When the winter time, when there's less feed.
Well, in the winter time, I usually try to feed what the farmers use.
So we've got, we'll get into some of these other topics in a little more detail. Introduction of predators, farm management techniques, and reduced roosting and feeding opportunities. I think I pretty much covered all that. So like I said, Marv's our guy up here. He's running 35 traps a summer. We've also got a program that mirrors this program in Skagit County, except it's a lot smaller. The county pays 100% of the program down there, but it's a smaller funding, smaller amount, so we don't do nearly what we do up here. It's only about a 3.5-4 month program down there. And that's all trapping. We don't do any of the other tools down there.
Let me just inject that the BC government, Langley, a bunch of others have been meeting with us occasionally for the last couple of years, and with Matt as well. There's still a reluctance to get into a trapping program up there, but the noise, the cannons and so forth that the blueberry people are using in lieu of having a trapping program is making all kinds of problems up there. So they're looking at, we've been encouraging them obviously, if we could get them involved as well, then we'd have, all three, the major ag areas involved, but that hasn't quite hatched yet, we'll put it that way.
These starlings do migrate a little bit, so we do get, in the springtime, we get quite a few birds coming out of Canada because they're not doing much up there. And then in the wintertime, they go back, or in the fall, they'll go back up there. Like Henry said, it'd be really nice to get some buy-off on them to actually do some control work, lethal control up there and help reduce populations. Because without a wider scale program, we're just putting Band-Aids on stuff. And at this point, I don't see eradication ever being an issue, or even possible with starlings. So that's our typical starling trap. We've keep enough corn and water or bait, whatever kind of, it might not just be corn, it might be fries, it might be whole ears of corn, whatever we can get. You try and leave half a dozen live birds in there that will attract the other birds in, and enough food and water that they can last 2-3 days without any problem. And we come in, clean them out every twice a week throughout the summer. So there's a...
How do they get in?
But I was just going to point out, there's little slat holes up here that are 2 inches wide that they get up on top, they can drop down in, but they can't fold their wings and fly out. So it's one-way door essentially. And then,
Crab trap.
what's that?
It's like a crab trap.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. And then on one of the back corners, we have a door that we attach a big tube to it that we just chase them all out into a bag and clean them out that way.
You don't gas them in there?
Not in there.
Well,
No, that'd take way too much gas. Too big of an area. So we'll funnel them out into a bag, usually like a laundry bag, put those into a smaller chamber, and then we'll pipe in CO2 into that at that point and
I've
gas
seen
them out.
guys, what they do is they just tarp that area and they back their pickup up there and they put their exhaust in there, bingo, it's done.
It's not an approved method by the American Veterinary Association. It works good, but it's not an approved method. That's carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
We use carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Little different reactions. So all of our euthanization tools are under guidelines of the American Veterinary Association. So if it doesn't fall under there.
Okay, all right.
I got this patch on. I've got to do what I'm told by policy. That's how we do things. So here's our numbers over the last 6 years, just in Whatcom County alone. Like I said, we do a very large starling program in this state in general. Over in eastern Washington, we used to do a lot more. We'd kill 500,000 starlings a year in eastern Washington. Now we probably do 100 to 200,000 easily every year. Between Whatcom County and Skagit County, we average between 50, 60,000 a year. And that's probably closer to 40,000 a year.
At that rate, are you controlling the population? Do you have any idea what the population is doing? Is it still going up, or is it coming down, or is it staying even?
No easy answers to that. There are some studies, and we'll refer to a little bit later, that are watching some of that kind of stuff. But we kind of sense that it's, what are the farmers thinking? If they think it's working, they're going to contribute, and they have. And it's really interesting as we get the money in.
Yeah.
We'll have some say, "Oh, I've never seen it worse." And others think, boy, I don't think I even have to contribute anymore because it seems like not a problem, So they do move around. But I think our impression is that we've got a lid on the growth. We certainly are not in the mood of eradicating. Maybe we're lowering it a little, but I think we're controlling the growth.
Yeah, just kind of taking the cream off the crop. Like I said, most of our trapping program, it focuses on the juveniles. We don't get a lot of adult birds, especially later in the year. So if you can look at our numbers, there's a little bit of a decrease, but it holds pretty steady around that 20,000 mark almost every year.
Just a comment, I was over at Granger at the Cargill plant the other day, and there's a feedlot right there at the plant. I didn't see one starling on that plant. It came to my mind and said, man, there's no starlings here. So I don't know what they're doing, but it was working.
We do a lot of projects on that. So one thing that we do like to do, this isn't just Wildlife Services going out and doing the work. We like to get involvement from the farmers. This is the next former county councilor that we take out. The nice thing about these traps is they're live traps. So anything that we capture in these traps that's not a target species, like this yellow-headed blackbird, we can go in there, hand capture it, and release it. No harm, no foul. We got our free food and shelter for the night. So it's a very good, safe tool to use for the entire area. And all the native birds around here don't get harmed by this trap at all. And we really encourage taking people out, the farmers, taking out the folks that are giving us money to see what we're doing so that they know that we're not just throwing their money out and away. Who knows John Pons? Anybody in this room? John used to work for me. That was a bad day for John. I don't remember exactly what happened there, if it was just a wind gust or the wind blew it right into the pond there.
Humane Society approved?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, you can tell how happy he is by that picture. So here's a little bit about our baiting program. Like I said, it's we use it predominantly in the winter. That's when the feed's less out in the natural area, so they're concentrated higher. We pre-bait for 4 to 5 days, get them used to the bait that we're going to use. Hopefully it's something that they're already used to eating, so we can limit the amount of days that we have to pre-bait. The last day we come in, we lace it with a 1339, which is, again, licensed only to us. Then we sit there and we'll monitor that. Typically, we'll put that bait out first thing in the morning, first light, when the birds are just coming off the roost, going to feed. And we'll sit there for 8-10 hours, however long we need to, until either all the bait's gone or the birds just aren't feeding anymore. And at which time we'll come back in and we'll pick up all the bait that's left. And then starting the next morning, we'll start looking around that general area, looking for dead birds, picking up dead birds. A lot of them do go out in the field and die. A lot of them go up on the roost. The farmers will call us and say, we've got a bunch of birds running, lying around the farms, and we'll come pick them up then, or they'll pick them up, and we'll tell them how to dispose of them.
How do you present that bait? On a tarp?
Typically, you want it on some kind of clean surface. So in some places we use tarps, other places, like down the middle of the barns where they're feeding, we'll just sweep out a really clean spot right down the middle of the aisles where they're running the tractors. So there's nothing on the ground, just bare concrete. And then we'll just put a line of bait right down the middle, something that the cows can't get into or nobody else can get into. And then we can sit out back and monitor, make sure that nothing else is getting into it. And then once it's done, we'll just go in there with a push broom and sweep the whole place up and clean up whatever's left, if there's anything left. If we do it right, we usually have it down pretty good on regards to how much bait we're putting out, so that there's nothing to pick up. That's why we try and pre-bait 4 to 5 days ahead of time. One of the other things we do, like I said, we monitor for non-targets, but then we also, 24 hours before we apply the bait, the 1339, we call the health department, we call the state fish and game department, we call, I think, WSU Ag, our WSDA. I mean, we notify a half a dozen different people so that when the calls start coming in of birds falling from the sky, they can explain to them what's going on and defer them back to us. And then we can explain in more detail what's going on. But typically around here, our projects, when we're doing these, I mean, if we do 1,000 birds, that's a really big baiting program for us. It's typically 500 birds or less for us. We just don't have the big flocks like they do over in eastern Washington. A new tool that we're looking at, we've been messing around with this now for, in this program, or in this state for the last 3 years, Laurel Sulfate. It is the compound found in everyday hair shampoo. What it does, it displaces the oil on the bird's back so that they can't thermoregulate and they end up dying from exposure. We've got a research branch called NWRC, National Wildlife Research Center. They developed this program in the Midwest for the big roost that they get back there. And what we'll do here is, typically around here, we do it in the winter. We try and set up a spray system along the entrances of barns where the birds are flying in and out of. We set that up during the day. We wait until all the birds go in at roost. And then once it gets good and dark, we'll go in, flip on the pump, and get a little mist system going. And someone will get in the barn and start chasing those birds out the barn door through this mist system. You want it to be no warmer than, I think, 42 degrees at night. Otherwise, you're just throwing shampoo down the drain. So it's a pretty effective tool if we can figure out a way of using it. We just haven't been able to come up with a good way of utilizing it, a good spray system. I'm working with a local irrigation company trying to come up with a good portable system. There's an individual in Skagit County that actually built his own spray system, mister system that he put up in his barn so that we can just come in and hook up a bucket full of this stuff and work down there. He's really impressed with it. So it's another tool that we're looking at using. That's just trying to find a good implementation of it. We're struggling on that. But again, it's another non-target, we can kind of focus on the birds that are in the barns. We're not getting non-natives. We're not getting, you know, we're not scaring owls out into it and that kind of stuff. A big push has come over the last couple of years for some more non-lethal tools to try and keep these birds out, especially in areas where trapping or shooting or poisons just aren't an option. So there's been a real big push on the jack kites and the helikites. Propane cannons, they've been around since the dawn of time, I think. And they're not very effective, in my opinion, at all. They're a temporary tool. Most people put them out, turn them on, and then forget about them until they run out of gas. And so they're going off at all hours, all times of the day. When birds aren't around, they're going off, and they're just not a very effective tool in that regards. There is some good ways of using propane cannons, but it takes a lot of manpower, and which a lot of farmers don't have time to deal with. So I'm not a big proponent. I won't recommend propane cannons at all myself. I don't know.
We're still supportive as a tool, not the tool.
Yeah. Predators, this has been a big push over the last 2-3 years to reintroduce or to get more of a kestrel population in the area. Kestrels are a natural predator on starlings. So they've gone through and they're putting up more nest boxes, Henry, you want to hit on this one a little bit?
This is something one of our local biologists, Karen Steensma, actually also a dairy farmer, has been really pushing real hard, including an organization here, Arosha, that are really trying to find non-native or non-lethal ways to try to deal with reducing the flocks. They don't kill a lot of starlings, but they harass them.
Yep.
And you know, that's part of the idea. If you harass them too much, then it becomes less of a nice place to live, and that will reduce the flocks eventually. But you know, this and all the other scare tactics and so forth, the concern we have is that if that's all we do, we really don't reduce the flocks. All we do is move them to the neighbor. So we believe that all of these tools have to be working together, including some lethal parts. So, but this is something that makes sense. Why not do it? You know, this is another tool that helps augment everything else.
Exactly. So as part of that program, there was some funding put together through the WSU Extension, I believe.
Actually a bigger grant. It was a big national grant through Michigan State.
Okay, national grant through Michigan State. Some locals, they've started building these nest boxes and then handing them out to farmers just to try and encourage kestrel nesting in the area, bringing more in. Here's the information. Kestrel boxes were $47 plus shipping. If anyone's interested in those, there's some contact information. I believe they're still available.
I hope. The slide's a little old, but that's, yep.
If not, we could probably figure out and get you some design or something if you're really interested. They're not that hard to build.
Right.
What was that going to do? I didn't get it.
So those were attracting more kestrels into your area to harass the starlings, to kind of push the starlings off your place.
That'll help.
So, and it's just it's a natural way of keeping the starlings kind of under control, a little more under control.
Got to get rid of them.
Well, and that's bottom line. Starlings need to be eradicated.
I saw some Harrier hawks working on starlings yesterday.
Yeah.
They were raising hell with them.
Yeah, they're another good one.
They were having
I
it
used
for
to
lunch.
see one on the utility pole right in front of your house.
I want you, but they were living in the Harriers had an older stand of timber to live in.
And that is a big part of the habitat, is trying to get these boxes and track them to some of these small timber.
It was on the Bosman farm.
Okay.
Over on, they were raising hell with the starlings.
Okay. We need more Harriers then.
Yeah.
So like we mentioned earlier, some other folks that we're working with. We've been working with the folks up north in British Columbia, working with Skagit County. So you guys are getting help from both sides. Also working with Michigan State, and Trinity Western, WSU, OSU, and Cornell, all on trying to come up with some better solutions, get a better handle on the starling problem. That was a long-winded discussion on starlings. So how we can help, how you can help understand the problem and help others understand it. Bottom line, starlings are invasive. They don't belong here. We need to get rid of every one of them. End of story. Responsible hazing, that comes back to the propane cannons again. If you're going to use the tools, make sure you know how to use them and you're using them appropriately. Don't just throw them out in the fields and let them go. A lot of these tools are very effective for 2-3 days tops, unless you're constantly moving them around your field. And especially with the propane cannons, you want them going off at different intervals, you want them going off at different times, you want them going off when there's birds around. They don't need to be going off at night because they're just going to tick off your neighbors. If you go up to Langley, it's going to sound like World War II. Apparently they've got everybody and their brothers up there with propane cannons, and maybe even their sisters. Yeah. The Kestrel reintroduction program, again, these are some older slides, but that's still something that I believe is available. If anyone's interested, we can definitely look into that for you and find out some more information on those. Beaver trapping. We started the beaver program 5-6 years ago.
Probably more like 10. It was sort of like we had a trapper and available, and they were looking for more work, year-round work, and ours is more seasonal with the Starling program, and they're saying, well, we could also add the beaver program too.
Yeah. So at the beaver program, predominantly we're working with the diking districts on this one. We will work for local. We can do it one of two ways with the locals. Either the locals can contact with the farm friends or the dike districts, or they can just contract directly with us if they want to. One of the things that we do, we deal with all the permits. We're still, even though we're a federal agency, required to get the state 30-day trapping permits for all body gripping traps. So we deal with all that. If we're using live traps, we don't need to get permits. All of our beavers are euthanized, and everyone always asks, well, why aren't they relocated? So I'll tell you why they're not relocated. In the state of Washington, it's illegal to relocate them, unless they're working on a new program in the state of Washington that does allow for some relocation of beavers specifically, but it is a very interesting topic, and without boring you all, essentially a landowner needs to apply for a permit who wants the beaver. Once they get a permit to receive a beaver, now they got to go find somebody that has a problem with a beaver and trap a beaver to get to that place. You can take them from, you can relocate them within Western Washington, you can relocate them within Eastern Washington. You can't take them from Eastern Washington to Western Washington, and I don't think, you might be able, they were saying that you could take them from Western to Eastern, but now they're thinking that maybe they can't do that either. So it's a really convoluted situation. So essentially there is no relocation for beavers. Two main methods that we use is trapping and shooting.
Hello.
Trapping, combination, who knows Don Camphouse? Don used to work for me also. There's been a few guys up here that's worked for me. So two different styles of trapping for, well, 3 different styles of trapping for beavers. You got conibear traps, which are big, large rat traps, about 12 inches square. It's a quick kill trap, set in the water. I got some pictures of that. That's how that beaver was killed. We got leg hold traps. Again, it's a padded leg hold trap that was set right on the water's edge where beavers are sliding in and out. Then we've also got the suitcase traps, which is a live trap that we set on dams typically, and then we don't need a permit for the live traps. They're big and bulky and heavy, and a lot of people like those just because, like I said, we don't have to deal with getting permits or anything else. Some of our local beavers in Whatcom County, you guys grow them fat and healthy up here. I don't know what you're feeding them, but it's good. I think our record up here, I think John got a 69?
I think so.
I think a 69-pound beaver is our record for our agency up here. I know some guys over in Eastern Washington, those corn-fed beavers that have caught some 80-pounders. That's a big beaver. I don't want one like that swimming around me. Okay, so it looks like we started trapping in 04. So yeah, it's been 10 years now. And that's our annual take up in Whatcom County.
We should probably just say that, this whole issue of privates and public, I mean, we are one of the options in beaver trapping.
Right, yeah, thanks. There are a lot of private guys out there that do beaver trapping, and we won't compete with them. So if you want to use a private guy, feel free. We'll graciously go do something else. But there are a lot of guys out there that, you know, there's a lot of young kids coming out that are trying to make a living, trying to keep that hobby going, that are getting into it, and so there are a lot of options for that.
One caution though, to make sure that they're permitted.
Right.
Because there are those who are not, you know, you do need a permit, it's not impossible to get, but you do need a monthly permit.
As a private guy, they also need a NUCO license from the state. They've got to be licensed by the state to be able to deal with nuisance animals, and then also on top of that, if they're going to use a body gripping trap, they need to have a state trap permit also.
Up in Alaska, we used 8-inch king salmon gear, works really effective. You just tether it to for bank beaver. You just tether it off and put a short stretch of gear out there, and in the morning you go get them.
Huh.
Roll them in.
Up.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I don't think that's an
So you can either move them or shoot them. 8-inch gear gets them really good.
I'll have to find out if that's authorized in the state.
What does that permit and license cost?
It's a permit to trap nuisance animals, body grip and trap, through the state.
How much?
It's free.
Oh,
Yeah, the permit's free.
that's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The license, what's the license cost?
The NUCO license, I think, is like $100 and some a year that the guy's got to have in order to be able to trap nuisance wildlife. But in order for them to get the trapping, the license to trap, or the permit to trap, not the license, the permit is free. So you just got to submit the application, and then 30 days later you have to submit a report of what you did under those 30 days. So some of our other stuff that I mentioned really quick too, we do predator control.
Before you leave the beaver, can landowners shoot beaver?
You cannot legally shoot a fur bearer in the state.
So you have to have a license to do that.
Yeah. So if you have a NUCO license, so if you're a private trapper, you can shoot a beaver under that license in a property damaging situation. But just to go out there as one of you folks, because you see a beaver causing problems, it's considered a fur bearer, you're not legal to shoot it. So.
But you guys can.
We can. And yeah, so that was one of our other options I didn't mention yet, is we do a lot of work at night. We'll go out and do spotlighting for beavers, especially on a dam that we're having trouble with the beavers getting to the traps, getting trapped smart. We'll go out and spotlight them and shoot them that way.
Why did it double in 2010?
Why did traps double in 2010?
Airport.
Oh. So that's when we started doing some work out at the Bellingham Airport.
And it also has gone up and down between privates and public. I mean, there are some districts that all just work with privates, and other districts just want to work with the public. And there's a difference. You use the privates usually charged by the beaver, right?
Yeah.
What is the cost now? Is it $250? Was some of their amounts? But for beaver, and we charge by the hour.
Yeah.
You know, and that may sometimes be a good deal and sometimes not. There might be 5 hours where you wouldn't get one. And other time it'd be 5 hours and you get 5 of them. You know, then it's a good deal. So it just depends.
What do you do about the dams?
We can't remove dams ourselves. You've got to have an HPA permit through the state. If the landowner has an HPA permit in hand, or the Dike District has one in hand and will give it to us, then we'll remove a dam for them. But if I don't have a copy of that permit, we're not touching that dam. We're not even allowed to put small holes in for trapping. If you change that water flow more than I think an inch an hour without a permit, it's illegal. So you got to be really careful around those dams.
There's been some interesting stories about that though too. I mean, one time you guys blew one, right? I mean,
yeah. So one of the in other locations, we do have the options of blowing dams with binary explosives. We've gotten some really cool tools. They're really safe. They're clean. We came up here, man, that's been
years. That's 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, Mike Linnell was still up here, so that's been quite a while. And we can, after we remove the beavers, to make it easy for getting rid of the dams and bringing in equipment, or you can't get equipment out there, we'll blow up the dams. But with all of our lovely salmon in the state and steelhead, we will never blow another dam in western Washington. We can only blow dams up in eastern Washington in man-made ditches. Anything that's a natural body waterway we can't touch. So
When did that go into effect, I'm wondering?
I haven't been able to do it for so long that I don't even keep track of it. I'm just told that I can't do it, so I don't. It's been at least 10 years that we haven't.
I've been illegal for a while, that's all.
I don't know.
We do that, Bob.
But I mean, isn't the problem there is that it kills a lot of fish, or can potentially kill.
It potentially, that's,
fish.
well, it's not the killing of the fish, it's they claim it's the sediment that we're putting back in the water. So it's, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't do it when there's fish in the stream, of course. You know, you pick the right season to do it. You'd be very restricted on that, but.
Because that's a well-known way to, you know,
Fish.
kill fish too. Dynamite in a jar, lime in a jar, put it in the water and so forth. Then they all, you know.
Yeah, exactly. All right, anything else on beavers?
I just wondered if you did you blow that dam on the Pomeroy property up in Custer?
It wasn't Pomeroy, it was in Custer though. That was
Yeah.
about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
thereabouts. That was,
It might have been my counterparts over there, but.
Somebody,
right,
that's the only way they could deal with it.
right. You couldn't get equipment back there and, you know, it was an isolated case, let's put it that way. But it was
isolated.
It was kind of fun.
That's true.
All right, predator control. So this is something that we also do quite a bit of, depending on the situation. In this state, we have an agreement with the state official fishing game, or the Department of Fish and Game. Anything dealing with bears and mountain lions, they deal with, unless it's a livestock issue, and then we'll usually assist with that. Coyotes, they don't want anything to do with them, so we deal with them. I know for most of you folks, you probably deal with them yourselves also, because you got the land to do it, and the knowledge and the expertise to do it. We do a lot of urban coyote work, where most people can't discharge firearms or set gear, that kind of stuff. We also deal with bears for timber damage and that kind of stuff.
How about elk?
We got involved with one elk project this year. State requested us to help them on it was in Skagit County. We did where there was some elk caught damaging organic alfalfa fields. We got in there and helped them remove the few there, but few and far between. We don't do a lot of elk and deer damage. They typically deal with that. The state now has, in every region, the state has a half a dozen or so damage specialists now that deal with the deer and elk issues, the bear issues. So there are some new avenues out there.
Fish and wildlife?
Fish and wildlife. So up here, it's Brandon, and I can't think of Brandon's last name.
Randy Griffin and Cole
Yeah.
Caldwell.
Yep. Yeah, they're two damage control specialists, and they can help you out with your deer and your elk issues if you have any. Some of the tools that we're using for predator control, along with beaver control, I now have 3 systems in my district, flare units, forward-looking infrared systems. That's a coyote in a park. So we do a lot of nighttime work. This is the camera itself. This is the spotlight. Wherever the camera's pointing, the spotlight's pointing. We got a switch in the truck, so as soon as we're ready to take care of what we need to deal with, we just hit a switch, the light comes on, we deal with the animal that we need to deal with. Lights out, 30 seconds, no one knows we're there, in and out, nice and quiet. That's how we do most of our urban programs. So like I said, we also do a lot of beaver work this way. It's quiet, we're not being intrusive on anybody, we're not out there raising a bunch of ruckus in the middle of the night. With that,
That's it.
that's all I got.
Yep.